in a Muslim-majority country. I know because
He's our president.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to...
Pretty much reminds me of the old days. Well, I've got the truck parked. We'll show Walter Hudson an amazing fourth showing. It's awesome. Thanks for coming back. Christian's going to keep the law and order. And then I think the statement was that Walter is like the parent in the room.
Yeah, I'm a little triggered by your violent rhetoric about locked and loaded. I don't know how to feel about that.
Oh, I've got a triggered story. I found out on Saturday, we've had these shared conversations about our liberal family members, and it's been risen to a whole new height. It's going to have Ron Branstner coming on the show. We're going to talk about the illegal immigration, the open borders. We're going to circle back and talk about the immigration. And, we have more Somalians in Minnesota than any other state in the U.S. We've got a lot of topics. It's going to be endless. I can talk about how I originally got on the air. My very first time, Walter, calling into Sean Handy's radio program, my main topic was, which is what we're battling again now. So my whole reason, the reason I was so worked up was I worked in every single manufacturing floor pretty much in the metro area and greater because I was working for a staffing company. And what I couldn't understand is this is back in 2009. So we're facing the same battle again. So back in 2009, I was already questioning because we were translating bathroom etiquette to employees that were not able to properly use the restrooms. They were already interrupting the manufacturing floors for their prayer. And I didn't understand why we were complying to these people. And the biggest frustration was that as I saw it, everybody, we had this workforce, that we're trying to hang on. We're already in a double dip recession, which is where the hell we're headed now. And so whatever people that were left working in these manufacturing floors, my fear was, because I was listening to all these heads of the manufacturing, from the CFO to the plant managers to the line leads, they're scared, they don't have money, they can't retire, they've lost their retirement. And now I'm looking at this workforce where right alongside of them, there's a large contingent workforce of illegal immigrants. How do I know this? Because I was working for a staffing company. And we were I-9 compliant. And, Walter, you can imagine how many of these companies were just turning their blind eye just to bring in these workforces at a very low wage and a very low markup, right?
Hey, Bella.
Right.
Yeah.
Bella, tell everyone what I-9 compliance is.
I-9 is what E-Verify. It's when you fill out new employment and you have to prove that you are a citizen of the United States. Show your documentation.
So that means that if they were I-9 compliant and they still had people there, that means the system's not very good, right?
Well, my presumption, and perhaps it's a naive presumption, is that if you're I-9 compliant and you're doing it right, then the immigrants you're hiring are legal. And your point, Bella, is that imagine the companies that aren't I-9 compliant, how much worse the impact is on the existing workforce. Right.
So my job as a salesperson was to go out and garner very large pieces of business, which was diminishing within 07, 08, 09, which is part of the reason why I fled to the oil fields, was to know that I was going to have a job. I didn't know how much worse the economy was going to get, but I really did know how many manufacturing floors had massive numbers of contingent illegal workforces because we couldn't compete when it came to the table. Some of these companies, when they were throwing out, wages of $7 at, say, a 1.2 markup, we just couldn't compete. So my fear was that when you've got companies that are already offshoring because they cannot continue to afford to do business here in the U.S., which many of these companies, I was already hearing that they're already offshoring to Mexico and other areas. And Obama has literally just got in office. So Obamacare has not been passed yet, but I did understand and know that this was going to be such a massive cost to all of these companies and individuals, yet nobody knew and understood what the real cost was going to be. So how are they even budgeting? Well, then I thought to myself, you know what they're going to do? When amnesty is shoved down our throats and it's suddenly legal to be illegal, you now take that line worker that's making $12, $15, $17, $18 an hour with benefits. And these guys and girls that are working alongside of them already will take those jobs, but they'll work for $8 an hour. So they're going to displace all those other individuals, and we'll be coming back and circling back and asking for our jobs again at $8 an hour. Pretty terrifying.
It makes one wonder. It makes one wonder whether or not there's any, because you don't hear this talked about publicly out in the open, but I wonder if in the privacy of the left-wing heart, there is any awareness of the cognitive dissonance between their position on workers' rights and minimum wage and their anti-corporate sentiment and their barking about the 1% and the wealthy, as juxtaposed against their open borders position on immigration, because those two things don't match. To your point, you know, if you're going to have a low skill, high supply, low demand workforce imported into the country that drives wages down, that's going against your notion. I mean, unless they're planning on forcing everybody to pay these people $15 an hour or more, which maybe that's the long-term plan, but they have to see, you would think that some of them have to see that these two positions don't mesh well with one another.
No, absolutely not. And at the end of the day, we all really do know what the end game is of the open borders and flooding in of all these individuals into this country. It's to secure the voter base for the party. I know that I jumped ahead of myself, you guys, in the format of the beginning of the show, but it got all brought up. I was at the grocery store before I got here, and a couple of really great people that have reached out to listen to the show, be a part of the show. One of them was a 20-year-old that lives up in Nisswa, Minnesota, and he's been a big activist, and he was at the Trump rallies. He did a lot of campaigning, and so I gave him my elevator speech of how I got started, and it just kind of brought everything back up again, because this was what was driving me absolutely crazy, is that my own position and job, I was terrified, was I going to be able to have another sales job in 2009, because people didn't need people. We were in a double dip recession. And then, you know, you're up against understanding where is this country really going? And we're back facing the same battle right now, in that we have completely wide open flooding these gates into this country once again, which is what Trump finally got a hold of. And you're watching, of course, it's dominating the news right now. I did have to turn off Fox this morning because it was just COVID, switched over to Newsmax. But it's 24/7 of known terrorists that are coming through, untested, yet so many are coming through COVID. And when Ron Branstner is going to join the show tonight, we're going to get into this a lot more. But, you know, he kind of threw out the notion that maybe that this was going to plant the seed for another lockdown. And I said to the 20-year-old that I was talking to while going through the grocery store, if they even threaten another lockdown, I think everybody's going to give a big FU to anybody and everybody that would even suggest it.
Yeah, well, I would hope so, but I've seen the entire country roll over twice, and they never should have done it once. So I wouldn't be surprised if it went that direction as well.
Oh, well, I definitely got ahead of myself, and here I was all excited to explain. I gave the tagline about this date that I had when I was 18 years old, and other random funny famous people that I ran into to kind of get us laughing, first of all. But I can get to that. I don't know when Jay's going to join us, but we do have Ron Branstner joining our show. Ron, I met him when I first moved back from the oil field. He used to be a real thorn in former Governor Dayton's side because Ron would show up and bring a lot of attention and education into Islamification, Sharia law, and the large Somali population that we have here in Minnesota. So he's got a lot of knowledge to bring forward. Last show, if anybody would like to listen to the last episode, we had a caller that said that he had been preaching about communism coming to this country since he was 10 years old. And then Jay jumped on and was talking about, which we are still baffled by, this non-ending emergency unconstitutional orders laid upon us by Timmy the Tyrant Waltz, which he came out, Walter, and he reeks of plaid shirt, milk breath, sticky finger, just everything, just everything ick about this little tyrant. And then he stands there and says that out of everybody, he more than anybody wants to end the emergency order.
Well, right. Yeah, I don't know who he's tricking with that one because, I mean, he's literally the only person who can. So if he wants to demonstrate that, you know, if he's really claiming that he wants to end it more than the people who are outside his mansion actively protesting, then he can prove it by doing so.
Yes, but he's preaching to the choir.
Which choir?
All the people who will applaud him regardless of what he does. Right.
Sure. Who will give him the benefit of the doubt that he is both having his cake and eating it.
Yeah, no reasonable person is going to listen to all this and say, "Oh, sure, yeah, we hear you, Timmy. We understand. Keep going." No reasonable person is saying that anymore.
Well, I saw it was actually our friend, State Representative Jeremy Munson, who put out a post on social media today talking about the governor signaling that he's going to turn his dials and loosen restrictions. And the thought occurred to me of, you know, if you're one of these people who've just been buying into the lockdowns and buying into all of the panic porn on COVID, do you just accept the notion that everything's okay now? If the governor comes out tomorrow and says, "I'm lifting my order," do you have a sigh of relief? Are you actually thinking to yourself, "Oh, wow, yesterday I was killing grandma if I went somewhere without a mask, but today, because the governor says so, it's a shiny, you know, fantastic paradise, and I can just do whatever I want without risking anything to anybody"? Like, is that really the worldview that people have? That their red light and green light on living life properly ought to be in the hands of one man, and that man ought to be Tim Walz?
The left, yes, completely complies and believes, and so I'm sitting, Walter. One of these days, you got to meet my mom, Yoga Hot Pants. So I go and pick her up. I'm not working this week. I start my new job on Monday, and so I've been picking her up every day and getting her out and about. And so but I'm cautious, and I do the things that she wants to do. She's 83 years old. She lives in a senior facility, not in assisted living yet. But this is how asinine this continues to be, which we all know. And so I pick her up, you know, I've got the mask, I've got the shield. I walk in the door, and thankfully the people that know me don't ask me those litany of stupid questions. And then you walk out the door with her after getting your temperature taken every single day that I show up. And literally you're walking out the door, and the minute I'm out the first door, I've already got the shield off, the mask off. You know, I'm just wondering, are any of these people like watching this and understanding just what a circle jerk this whole thing is? But this is what really, really got to me, Walter, and I don't even know if I can fix this. So we're having lunch, and I want to go up north and meet this wonderful attorney friend, Richard Dahl, and do some paperwork, get out for a night. And then all of a sudden, I remember if she leaves with me overnight, Walter, I have to quarantine her in her place for 14 days straight. I cannot even go in and see her, even though I'm an essential care provider to her, and she can only leave for doctor appointments. So when I called the facility back and want to double check, she said it is the Minnesota Health Department and their facility. And I said, listen, we have vacations and summer coming up. You mean to tell me I have to play these stupid ass reindeer games come the summer and vacations? And you know what the answer was?
Yes, you do.
Where do you even go with that? I mean, that's why all of this madness and this insanity has to stop. But I can see we've got Ron in queue. Christian, I don't know if you're going to want to bring him on. That's, I don't know. And that's when I said, I don't see this ending in a very, very long time, and the impact to the seniors, specifically my mom. So I don't know, Walter. I'm going to start calling around and saying if there's other facilities that don't have such strict restrictions, because I can't see an entire year going without even a vacation with my mom.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, part of this comes down to liability, right? So even when the governor lifts his order, let's say he lifts it in its entirety tomorrow, that doesn't mean that your workplace and the corner grocery store or all these places that we're doing business with, your mom's care facility, is going to lift their restrictions. They may keep their policies in place because they're concerned about public image and legal liability. And so one of the things that we need from the state, and if we had a real governor who actually cared about the economic and psychological well-being of his residents, we would have a push for liability protection, general liability protection for every person and every organization from being sued over contracting COVID.
I'm seeing some drastic measures coming my way. What, Christian?
Walter, are you saying that you think we should enact some sort of tort reform?
Oh yes, don't get me started.
Ahead of the game, we can't get tort reform done in after the game, ever.
Yeah, it's been a while since anybody ever talked about it. I mean, that was one of the things that during the height of the Tea Party, tort reform was not necessarily a hot topic, but it was a whole lot warmer than it has been prior and since. And I definitely want to bring it back with a vengeance. Tort reform is huge.
It's bigly?
It's bigly.
I'll tell you what's bigly. Bigly is my big-ass attitude that's about to get unleashed once again onto these people. I did it when I first moved Yoga Hot Pants in. I don't remember if I told you guys, but literally she wasn't even in the door, and I had already sent my attorney already emailed them and was like, Bella's in the house with her mother. Any questions, contact me. I wanted to set the relationship properly at the beginning, and obviously I need to do that. Hey, guys, before I bring Ron on, if you want to enjoy a guided horseback ride right here in the metro area, beautiful Stillwater, Minnesota, Willie, a great guy. You'll be safe. You'll have a lot of fun. Give him a call at 651-468-6050. And Kim Fox, owner of Unique Nutrition and Diabetes Services. She's a registered licensed nutritionist. She has conventional medicine provides medication as a band-aid approach to provide symptom relief to their patients. Working with Kim can help you set goals, better understand your health, and ultimately lead you to a healthier, happier, more energetic life you've dreamed of. Based in Andover, contact Kim at foxdiabetes.com to schedule your free 25-minute health makeover strategy session. If you mention me, get 25% off your first package of choice. If you're a little fed up and you're having one of those days and you're sick and tired of all these liberal madness and bullshit, go to Strike Fitness, located in Rogers, Minnesota. It is the best and most fun total body fat-burning, stress-relieving group fitness boxing workouts on the planet, and learn a new skill. Go to strike-fitness.com. And ladies, likewise, you want to go and have a really nice hot yoga workout. It is Yoga by Blissopia in Blaine, and they are not your traditional heated yoga classes. You can do healing touch sessions, workshops, and more are all offered 7 days a week. Just go to Yoga by Blissopia. So, Ron, I was so excited when I got a hold of you. It was probably, I think it was day 2 of the pandemic. And I reminded you of this last night because I called you, and the first thing I said out of my mouth when I got you on the phone was, this was all political. Did I not?
Yeah, you did, and you were correct. It is all political. That's correct. And, it's interesting. I was listening to your last speakers there just a minute ago, and I'm thinking about, you're riding a horse. They're out riding horses, and I think that's a wonderful thing. But do horses have to wear masks too? I mean, you think about it, you got a bat virus, right, that was created out of Wuhan Center. It's a bat. It's a rodent. So if a rodent can cause a disease amongst people, wouldn't it be able to cause a disease amongst animals, dogs, chickens, and cats? I mean, why does a rodent only affect human beings? You think it would affect animals too. So when you're out riding those horses, are you gonna mask up those horses too?
No. Don't even go that direction. I saw something weeks ago that said some rabbit-ass lunatic was talking about testing our pets. No, don't go there. No, I'm just so.
I was being facetious, by the way.
Ron,
being a little facetious.
Who is the boxing guy that you said you brought up last night that supposedly he died from the COVID vaccine? Was that true?
Hitman, yes. Hearns, I believe it is.
No, Hitman he's not the one that died from it. I thought he was the one that announced the story.
Yes, it was. Well, I'm feeling that. I just talked about it a half hour ago. My apologies. Yes, famous boxer. No. But yes, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I apologize.
Well, it brought up a funny story. Before we get real serious, I'll make everybody laugh a little bit because as when Jay Dugan brought up that Tommy the Hitman Hearns had made this announcement about a friend of his who had passed from the COVID vaccine, I chirped out that I had actually gone on a date with Tommy Hearns when I was 18 years old. And so that's when you and Jay were like, pictures. And I was like, well, that was a long time ago. And then Jay said that it was a missed opportunity. And then he made some crack about if Janet Jackson had pulled up, but would he have turned down so here's the backly taken off from Minneapolis, Minnesota. I went down, I got hired from a company to sell tanning lotions on the pool decks in Las Vegas. And, of course, I thought nothing of up and leaving right away. And so I was leaving the Camelback Inn Resort one day, and I was just walking out, and I see this black Jaguar parked right there in the parking lot. And as I'm walking towards it or to the parking lot, a gentleman walks up to me with like a walkie-talkie, and he said, I'm sorry, but I've got someone that would like to introduce himself to you. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so I walk up to this Jaguar, and the window rolls down, and this hand comes out, and he says he wants to introduce himself, and will I go to dinner with him? And I'm like, can I get your number and let me call you? And so I go back to my apartment, and I called my boss, and I said, do you know Thomas Hearns is? Because it didn't say Hitman on there. It just said Thomas Hearns in really nice cursive writing. And he's like, the Thomas Hitman Hearns? And I'm like, I don't know. And he goes, well, is he a black individual? And I'm like, yeah. And he says, holy crap. And I'm like, what? And so anyways, I did go to dinner with him. He was a very elegant gentleman. It was an interesting, fun evening, but I did get invited to go see him. He was going to be on the Johnny Carson show. And me at 18 did not have the confidence to ask of all the logistics, my own hotel room, are you married? I just left the whole thing alone. But anyways, so Ron, let's try and pull this together and get a little bit serious, but I had to get the story out there because
that was Marvin Hagler is the boxer. Marvelous Marv Hagler is the boxer name that died.
Wow. Yeah, I've been hearing a lot of stories.
Okay,
so
let's move on.
Ron, I met you when I first moved back from the oil field. You were on the show back in the day when I was doing the show. I was explaining earlier, you used to give former Governor Dayton a good run for the money on educating people about Islam, Islamification, the Somalian resettlement, and do we want to start with the southern border crisis and the unconstitutionality of Biden opening up the floodgates?
Well, I think that's where we want to start that because it's at the topic of every newscast right now and what's going on at the border. And a lot of people don't understand that this is an invasion and it's created from the Democrats for the great replacement of the European culture in the United States. And so I've spent time on the border. I was a Minuteman. I was volunteer border patrol for the Minutemen. So I got to see the horrendous, vile things that happen on the border, especially the kids and children and women, and the sexual abuse that's happening down there through drug cartels. So when people think that this is a humanitarian issue to do with humanitarianism, it is purely human trafficking at every level. We got drug trafficking, we got gun trafficking, we got sex trafficking, and we got human trafficking, and that is coming over at alarming rates. And it's going to affect every single person or city in this United States, because right now he says he's going to allow 300,000 asylum seekers into this country this year alone. That's just this year. That doesn't include the refugee resettlement program, nor the Haitian, the Cubans, and all those others, which is close to 185,000, and that does not include the 1.1 million people that are sitting in adjudication in the United States under the asylum seeking process. So we're talking just on the onset, just looking at it right now, we're talking close to 2 to 3 million people, and then he wants to adjudicate and put into the system and bring into your counties. That doesn't include the 12 million people that are here. It's actually closer to 30 million. That they won't go there with that. So think about this in a totally different perspective. You've got a fake pandemic going on, or a pandemic if you want to call it, and they're allowing these people coming from other countries. We're saying that these people under Section 207 of the government constitution, that it costs about $107,000 per person to allow each one of these people into the country. $107,000 per person. So you times that by 30 million. They estimate that if you allow 1 million people or 10 million people amnesty, it's going to put $10 trillion on the books overnight. Are we prepared to destroy our country overnight for this? Biden is going to, and his administration is going to destroy this country overnight. They did it to Germany. They did it to France with Merkel, Germany. And what they did to Germany, they destroyed it. Look at England. They destroyed England with mass migration. We're talking the great replacement of people. They've already destroyed through this pandemic the middle class and the businesses, middle class businesses. They shut them down in California and across the country. So who are they going to replace those with? Most of those people lost their jobs. Most of those people lost their businesses. So who are they going to replace them? The idea and the principle behind this whole this immigration issue is to replace those people with people of color. And how do I know that? If you go under Tim Walz's transition team of 29 and the Thriving by Design blueprint, it states in there that they are going to bring people of color out to the rural communities to bring them up and thrive the communities in those areas. This is all about race, it's all about replacement, and it's all about taking down the middle class of the United States. 1.1 million people are sitting there in the adjudication, and he wants to bring in another million just this year alone. It is going to destroy America, and people are sitting back watching TV going, this is just not right. You better fight back, because if you don't fight back, especially in Minnesota, did you know that Minnesota is the #1 state in the union for secondary migration and #1 for refugee resettlement when it comes to per capita per city? We got sanctuary city policies. We're harvesting people in the inner cities, which is a plantation of human trafficking, a modern-day plantation of slave labor, and we're all saying this is okay. How lunacy is this? How far do you have to go before you finally just crack under the pressure that this is happening here? This is ridiculous. I mean, I'd like to know the breaking point of the United States citizen, because Germany broke when they let millions of people in there and they flooded their country. So did England. Where's the United States breaking point? That's what I ask you today. Where is that breaking point? When they come and seize your house and take over and say, this is our land now? When they take away your business? When they leave you with nothing? They took all of your assets, and you kept your business alive for the last 12 months because it was closed. You took everything that you earned and you kept your business alive, and they kept closing it down. Where does it stop with Waltz? Because he's not going to stop. He's not going to end this. He's going to go. I mean, they burned 247 buildings down during the riots. They asked for $27 million to give to a family before the trial even started. Where's the lunacy here? Where does it stop? Bill, I ask you, because this doesn't make sense. Explain it to me, because I don't know. And where's the breaking point in the United States? Can you explain that to me?
I wish I had it. I have. Oh, go. But Walter?
No, I mean, seriously. I mean,
I asked myself, so when I tell you that, and everybody listening, I literally last March, I had just started a job, and I was listening to Rush Limbaugh, and none of this COVID crap added up to me. Just from looking at it from my perspective with my common sense. And that's why I called you, Ron, because I trust and I know that you're very knowledgeable. And when Rush asked, did you remember where you were when H1N1 blew through? And I thought, for the love of God, yeah, and I never worried about it. And then as I watched, I mean, I never complied. I never wore the mask. I didn't do the gloves. I didn't touch my face. But immediately when the businesses shut down, Ron, this is when I panicked, because when I saw that I'm getting a little bit of feedback. When I saw that everybody was so compliant to shut their doors down, and if Don Huizenga's listening tonight, Don remembers, because I started calling constitutional attorneys and trying to figure out, did people understand the unconstitutionality of all of this? Because, Ron, I thought that Minnesota would have fought back. That's why, as I'm listening to you, I don't have the answer of what the breaking point is. And, Walter, I'm going to hand it to you here in a second, because just in Minnesota alone, like, I still don't understand. I had to go to Walmart this morning to get my contacts, and I was, they instituted everybody mask crap, and of course I'm not wearing mine. I've got a disability. I play this little reindeer game, and I'm standing there, and the woman waiting on me, I just said to her, I said, this shit has to stop. It's got to be done with. And she said, you're right. And I said, people, and Walter, you and I talked about this last week, it's as if people are even more afraid now than they were back when they could actually be afraid. So where's the breaking point? I got to sit and think on it. I don't know. And I don't know if we're going to see it. Walter, what are your thoughts?
Well, as you know, I tend to be the pessimist in the group. And, I don't know that Minnesota has a breaking point, in all honesty, because of what are we talking about that needs to break? Like, what at the root, what needs to shift in order for all of these policies, whether or not you're talking about unfettered refugee resettlement or COVID policies or the lockdown or any of these leftist policies that we could cite, what lies at the root of them? Why do people accept them? And the answer, as I see it, is they accept them because they have bought into the idea that in order to be Minnesota nice, you have to yield to the other guy's claim of what he needs. So you have to look with empathy and sympathy upon the refugee. You have to look with empathy and sympathy upon the person of color. You have to look with empathy and sympathy upon the person who might get sick if you don't wear a mask. And that what needs to change is people need to wake up to the fact that all of this quote-unquote empathy and sympathy only goes in one direction. You don't get any empathy. You don't get any sympathy. Nobody cares that you lost your business. Nobody cares that you lost your job. Nobody cares that you're making less money when you adjust for inflation. Nobody cares that you don't have the same culture that you were born into, that you are slowly losing those intangible aspects of what it means to be a Minnesotan, be an American. You don't get empathy at all or sympathy on any of those points. It's only empathy for the other guy who just happens to align with the left's ideological agenda. And so, when are people going to wake up to that? If they haven't figured it out by now, I just can't conceive of what would emerge that would be that breaking point. I mean, we just talked about how completely people folded to the governor's executive orders in the first place. I mean, twice. He locked us down, turned down his dials, and then locked us down a second time, and everybody just rolled over and went along with it, despite of the absurd constitutional claims that if something bad happens, it cancels the republic and installs a monarchy indefinitely. People are just like, okay. I mean, if that's the state of our culture, I can't conceive of the point past which people are going to snap and rediscover the founding principles, because it seems to have been lost in people's hearts and minds.
I tell you, that's a very good point that you just make there. I believe that this is war against the urban to the rural, because the rural communities ain't putting up with it. You go out to the rural communities, small towns, they're not wearing a mask, except for when you go to work or to Walmart. I don't wear them anywhere, of course, but most people don't wear them. We go to restaurants out here. We do everything out in the rural community. We don't wear masks, but the inner city does. And the inner city sheep will follow exactly what Waltz tells you to do. And I think this is a cultural war between the inner city to the urban, and they're butting heads. And as I stated to you last night, Bella, I said the rural communities, the small rural communities in America, in Minnesota, are nothing but babysitters for Minneapolis, St. Paul. Minneapolis, St. Paul is nothing but a bunch of children who follow lockstep and to what the governor says and what they do, and they're very submissive. But if you go out to the rural communities, they don't put up with this. That's why you're going to see 3.5 million people to 2.5 million people, and they're butting heads right now. We take care of the inner cities with our solar energy. We put our solar energy out in our cornfields. We put our solar energies out in our yards. And where does that energy go? It goes to the inner city. We put our windmills, and all the energy goes to the inner city. We're babysitting those whining little sniveling brats in Minneapolis, St. Paul, who cannot function on their own unless somebody tells them what to do, how to walk, how to eat, what the educational system is. We are babysitters. That's all we are. We're adult babysitters. And when they spill their milk, what do? They cry to the rural areas and say, please help us. We just burned down 247 buildings. We want millions of dollars. Will you help rebuild us? No, we're done with you. We're done babysitting you. We're done with you. I think this is a rural-urban divide. And if you look at Waltz's transition team and you look at what's on it, it is all about, in fact, it says rural to urban. The Thriving by Design blueprint is rural to urban, to bring out all their people of color, people that are low poverty people out to the rural communities. So we have to take care of them. I don't want to be your babysitter. You guys take care of your crap.
Well, and let's break down strategically why that's their plan. I mean, part of it is obvious, but I think part of it is more insidious and less obvious. Because if you consider the fact that right now in Minnesota, we haven't had a statewide Republican win at this point, I think it's measured in decades. We have, with each progressing cycle, a further calcification of voter fraud and the system that enables voter fraud. And so this majority of voters that lies in the urban core, that lies in Minneapolis and St. Paul, they've got the state by the throat, and they're not going to let go. So if we were smart, those of us who are outside of the Twin Cities area, if we were smart about how to fight back about this, the only tool that's available to us is local defiance. So the counties say, we're not going to cooperate. The cities say, we're not going to cooperate. We're not going along with this. We're not falling in line with what the state is mandating and advocating for. It's a rebellion of municipalities, a rebellion of the lesser magistrates is the only mechanism we have to push back against this stuff. And they know that. And so what are they trying to do? They're trying to shift the demographics, and they already have in the suburbs. They're trying to shift the demographics further and further out from the cities in order to disable the possibility of true resistance rising up against them in the rural areas.
Yeah, and you're seeing that all across Minnesota. I mean, you're seeing it. You did a good example again. Look at Long Prairie. Look at Wilmer, Melrose, Faribault, Austin, Worthington, and Madelia, St. James. They're all being consumed by these far-left people that are bringing all of these ideologies out to their communities because they're trying to change the makeup of rural communities. And the small communities are getting hit so fast that they don't even know what's going on. They just get hit so fast and go, what's happening here? Why is this all changing? Because some big Minneapolis, St. Paul, somebody with wealth comes out to the rural communities, puts up some big chicken plant, brings them in, start changing the whole dynamics of the city. The city says, we don't know what to do because these chicken plants or these produce plants or meat processing plants, they won't hire Americans. They won't.
Why is that? Ron, why is that?
Because they're looking for, well, two reasons. One is because the equity programs, social equity programs out of the United Nations and under the Presidential Council of Sustainability, that's one. The second one is cheap labor. And if you look at the history of Austin, Minnesota, and Hormel, the 1985 meatpacking plant crisis, the treasurer of the Hormel Foundation said, if cheap labor doesn't come to us, we're going to it. So they started going down to Mexico and bringing cheap labor up. That was the first start of all of this. Well, they bought out Genio, then they bought in Wilbur, they bought out Melrose, and so they're spreading their virus throughout the whole state, and we're not fighting back. And so here we are, all these people that have worked for these corporations for years, for hundreds of years, especially in Hormel, suddenly they're not hiring people. I mean, this is the most racist thing I've ever seen. Hire people of color. Okay, what happened to people of white? You're not part of this anymore. This is cheap labor. And we're seeing slave labor and plantation labor from the 1800s start up all over again. Now, you think about this. When I say plantation labor, what do you think a sanctuary city is? A sanctuary city is a farmer's land where they keep the downtrodden and they don't want them to go off the property. Why? Because they are considered slaves of us. Don't leave the plantation. That's why they're sanctuary cities. Don't leave the plantation. Stay within here. Stay inside these processing plants. We'll take care of you. This is modern day slave labor, and Minnesota is probably one of the biggest slave labor states in the nation. And they act like they're so pompous and so above their Minnesota niceness, and they sit there and they have people take care of their chickens, their produce, their farmers, mow their yards, take care of them, and then they say we're against slave labor. No, you're not. You're part of this whole program. And Minneapolis, St. Paul is the plantation of Minnesota, and we're accepting it. We tolerate this every day, and now they want to bring it out to you. And I tell you what, I don't know when Minnesota's going to wake up. But remember, 80 out of 87 counties voted for Trump in 2016. So you know most of the counties are not for this. You just got a large percentage of right in Minneapolis, St. Paul. You know, so it's plantation labor is what it is.
And again, the problem is that the voters and the residents in those counties find themselves in a position where they don't know what they're supposed to do, because the dominant narrative is come out and vote every 2 to 4 years, and if it doesn't go your way, wait another 2 or 4 years and try again. Well, that's not going to work. I mean, that's not the way that you're going to be able to push back against this. This is something that's going to require extraordinary action taken at the local level by sheriff's departments, county commissions, city councils, school boards. Like I say, there's going to have to be a rebellion of the municipalities that overwhelms the capacity of the state to respond to. You know, you're going to have to put Keith Ellison in a position where he has to sue every single one of those 88 counties all at the same time and exhaust his resources and his capacity to give attention to each of them.
Well spoken. I'll tell you one of the things that we're doing now up in the Little Falls area. A small group of individuals we're hitting every single township in the area. I think we're up to 40 now. We're going to Amory, Wisconsin on Thursday to speak on this. We're trying to take the municipalities back. And so we know that in Stearns County, the counties try to control all the municipalities of the townships in that area, in the county of Stearns County. That's not the way the Constitution was set up. The townships are more powerful than the county. The sheriff is more powerful than the townships. And so what's happened in counties like Stearns County, the counties are taking over. They're writing comp plans for the small municipalities, and they're taking over. And who takes over and who controls them? The inner city and the Met Council and all these different planning commissions. So MADO, MADO, they're all controlling these smaller communities. I think you're hitting it right on the head. You have to take back your township. If you take back your township, they cannot enter. Don't take grants from these foundations, the Minnesota Council of Foundations. Don't take grants from them. Don't take grants from Southwest Minnesota Initiative Fund and the Blandon Foundation and the Hormel Foundation. These guys are the ones that are precipitating using grant money, using your money to bring in cheap labor, and you're accepting it because you think it's all humanitarian. It's not. It's cheap labor. And I think you hit it dead on when you say take back the municipality, because that's where we have to start. And that's what we're doing. We're doing that in central Minnesota. We just need other people in other counties and townships to say no more. We're not taking any grants that have sustainability attached to it. Any sustainability, which is social equity, we don't want your grants. Keep your grants. And that's where you have to stop it.
And let me just provide some context as somebody who sits on the city council of how the kind of person you need to elect to your city council, your school board, your county commission in order to be able to affect this, because it's going to be counterintuitive and it's going to require you to go against the grain, because the staff at whatever level, whether you're dealing with a school superintendent or a city administrator or whoever you're dealing with, the staff sees the opportunity to take a grant, and it's like honey to a bee, right? It's like honey to Pooh Bear. They're going to go after it, and they're going to recommend it, and they're going to tell you you're crazy if you're against it. And the average person who gets elected to these municipal entities and doesn't have any ideological grounding and doesn't really know what's going on, and it just kind of goes along to get along and thought it would be cool to be a city council member, they're gonna go along with whatever staff suggests because it sounds fiscally responsible. I mean, imagine you're considering your budget every year, and here comes a grant that's going to put hundreds of thousands of dollars in your lap and potentially keep you from having to raise the levy on your residents. And then you get to go and campaign on that next time around of, hey, I kept your levy level because I took all this grant money. It's incredibly attractive to just go along to get along. And so the type of people that you need to be electing at the local level are folks who are, number one, educated. They understand what's going on. They understand how important it is to do the right thing in spite of what they're being told by staff. And two, they have the gumption to get it done, like these folks in Ramsey just did with their nullifying of the executive orders from Tim Walz. The only reason they were able to do that is because they had a pre-existing understanding of what was at stake. They knew that they were going to be going against the grain, and they didn't care because they prioritized doing what was right in the long term over what was politically expedient. That's a very rare breed, but those are the type of people that we need to be electing.
So how do I go about recruiting people with actual balls, with critical thinking, common sense, and know how to basically fight and go against the grain? Do y'all need me to run out to the oil field and grab a bunch of roughnecks? Because that's basically, I think, what.
I found out that's coming in on May 1st to Amory, called FACL. It's a Christian organization, but they're an organization, a conservative organization that is training for 8 hours. It's an 8-hour training session, how to train conservatives how to take their cities back. I'm going to get them to Minnesota, Bella, and we're going to advertise that they're here. And we need people to go to the training course, because I'll explain to you why. 2 years ago in July, I kind of backdoored my way into the League of Minnesota Cities convention. It was in St. Cloud. We got to go in there. Now, I wasn't part of any city council, but I was invited through a friend of mine. And I went in there. I was the only one who wasn't city council or county commissioner. And what I heard in that meeting, those meetings, 3 days meetings, would shock anybody. They were pounding their fists with mayors from Wyoming, Edina, all across the state, sat in that room, and they pounded on the table. A Muslim woman was pounding on the table. We have to get rid of these white laws for these white Americans. And everybody in that room, city councilmen and mayors, got up and cheered. Get rid of these white laws. They wanted to get rid. These people wanted to get rid of the United States Constitution, and they were in that room and they cheered to get rid of it. And then they said, we need to get like-minded people just like us to run for positions of mayor and city council. So the League of Minnesota City, which is in every city in Minnesota, in the United States, 18,000 cities, are promoting people of a liberal idea to take over. I mean, you just look at these city councils. Wilmer, 7 out of 8 liberal. That's a conservative town. East Grand Forks, 7 out of 8. You've got St. Cloud, almost all of them are liberal. Why? Because the League of Cities is planting these people into every one of these city councils. And we're accepting it because League of Cities sounds like a good thing. They're an insurance policy for the city. They know. No, they're not. They're recruited from the Democrat Party. And I was there, and I listened to them. You need to get the League of Minnesota Cities out of your city because they're a dangerous entity. And I listened to them, and they want to get rid of American laws. And they talked about the racism and bringing social equity to these small communities. I'm telling you, the League of Minnesota Cities and the Green Steps program, I'll get into that in a second. We need to stop them in Minnesota ASAP because they are consuming Minnesota and their politics. You know?
I'm interested in learning more about this organization you're bringing to the state and possibly attending the training just to learn more. But just to put a little cherry on top of the sundae you just served, these municipal races. So when you have an election and somebody's running for school board or city council or whatever the case may be, most of the time there are few to any issues that are actually discussed. It's basically a beauty pageant. It's a popularity contest. It's like when you were voting for class president in school. It's, here's my family, here's how long we've lived in the town. Here's my reference to a local hotspot that everybody loves to give you my credentials that I'm a legitimate person who lives here. There's very little of substance that's ever discussed. And so in order to weed out the snakes who are in the mix here, as candidates and as the supporters of the right candidates, you're going to have to make these municipal elections about issues. And that's going to take effort. You're going to have to go door to door. You're going to have to create a conversation about specific issues and then demand that candidates get put on the record on where they are on those issues. That's going to be absolutely essential if you want to actually affect this. I imagine that's part of what these folks would teach you.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because you have to go door to door, but the problem is you don't have the foot soldiers, because most people on the conservative side don't want to do that. They rely on advertising and whatever, but you need to go door to door, because they're going door to door, and they're hitting this hard. But the thing is they're hitting it hard with grant money through foundations. Most of the advertisement that you're seeing in Minnesota for these liberal politicians comes from grant funds. You look at Blandin Foundation. Did you know that Blandin Foundation out of Grand Rapids, Minnesota, has trained over 7,000 people in almost every city in Minnesota to run for civic office, to do political leadership, and they even state on there they are purely about social equity. And they're using their personal money along with grant money, and they're asking 24 people at a time each month to go to their Blandin retreat at the Sugar Lake Lodge in Grand Rapids. Go into your city and find out who's on the Grand Rapids Partners in Leadership program. You will be surprised who they trained. Doctors, lawyers, dentists. You'll be surprised. The mayor of Austin, Minnesota, the past three mayors, the past two mayors of Wilmer, Minnesota, the mayor of Long Prairie, those two mayors of Wilmer and Long Prairie said they would have never multiculturalized their city. They say it. If it wasn't for the ideas and the tutelage of the Blandin Foundation. Blandin Foundation is Minnesota's worst nemesis. I mean, they are changing Minnesota drastically, and nobody's paying attention to them. Look at their list of who they got going to training this month, and then next month, and how many people. Then start looking at. They put their names of the people on there. Look at those people. Look, Blandin Foundation, Hormel Foundation, McKnight Foundation, and the Bush Foundation, the Otto Bremer Foundation are all right behind everything precipitating this mass movement, and they're being guided by the League of Cities in Minnesota to change the dynamics from a conservative Christian state to a far left liberal Los Angeles style mentality. And if you don't stop these guys and teach everybody that these foundations are bad, they're going to eat you up fast. I've been studying them for years. I know what they do. You know, why do you think Tim Walz has got foundations on his transition team? He's got the Blandin Foundation. He's got the Hormel. He's got a terrorist organization on his transition team. Did you know that Tim Walz has a terrorist organization ranked as the 82nd most powerful terrorist organization in the world called CARE on his transition team? How insane is that? How many of your readers, your listeners, know that he's got a terrorist organization that was designated by the United Arab Emirates on his transition team? Does anybody in Bella, did you know that?
I know it. That's why it's so dangerous having Attorney General Keith Ellison as our Attorney General. When listening the other day to a discussion about, why isn't Walz being investigated for the nursing home deaths from sending COVID patients into the nursing homes, because it's actually Keith Ellison's job as Attorney General to start that investigation. I mean, I don't know, guys. I tend to jump in and say, stop throwing the heavy, wet carpet on all of us and dragging us all down. But this is a lot of information tonight, and a lot of good information, because, when we look at Minnesota, which I've always said, Minnesota is a unique state. I was listening to talk radio yesterday when a caller called in talking about, the host was talking about the dangerousness of this trial that's coming up for Chauvin, and what's going to happen if the results are not, it's not going to be a fair trial, and what's going to happen to Minneapolis and all the lawlessness. And we all know the crime rate that is soaring and all of the insanity. And the caller that called in was from Minneapolis. And when the host said, well, where are your leaders? I mean, you got a governor, you got a mayor. And the caller just laughed and said, what do you mean, what leaders?
Yeah.
I mean, I've joked in the past and called Frey soy boy, doesn't look like he's more than 12 years old. We can joke all we want, but the bottom line is the capability or incapability is in plain sight of, when in a crisis, how do your leaders respond? And at the end of the day, what is their real agenda? Well, Ron, you've just laid out what the agenda of governor and the rest of these guys are. I mean, this and this is what we talked about last night in show prep, is there's also the mindset of the majority of Minnesotans is this Minnesota nice, this Scandinavian base as a mass. Now and as I listen, they're so much better at organizing and fighting and bringing their agendas to the masses. And I was back when I was helping campaigning for the Trump campaign, we always on the right talk about how hard it is to get ourselves collective and out and fighting together. So I don't really have the answers right now. I wish I knew exactly how to tell people and to inspire them, but it's going to take a real grassroots effort here in the state to be able to start fighting to somehow turn this state around.
Well, I think you can do it, Bella, because I'll be there Thursday night, and I'm going to get you the information on this group. And they're hitting. It's an 8-hour session where they actually bring in professionals to teach cities how to take back the conservative views back to their small city. And I think we could start there. I've also called several other groups in Minnesota, the John Birch Society, another gentleman that goes to the state capitol, Pastor, and he's got some groups. We're going to get these groups together. We're going to go to these seminars. I'm going to bring them to Minnesota. And I think with your help, we can get people, I think it's $40 for adult, and it's an 8-hour session, $25 for children. And we're going to get people educated to take over their city. We got to start somewhere. And I think taking a Saturday out of your life to come there and to do this session would be great. And then you can educate people through your radio station, and we can start there. I'm gonna do another radio station, try to get people. We have to start somewhere, right? But complaining about it isn't going to work. They've got the money. The foundations have got the money, and they got the taxpayer dollars. They're using the money against you. I'll give you an example. This DACA issue where they let all these kids into the country 4 years ago, which they're doing now, they let in, and Emmer, along with all the other conservative Republicans and Democrats, voted $375 million to transport these kids across state lines without any parents, without any adult supervision, and they dispersed them all across the United States, and that's what they're going to do now. But the problem is they voted for $375 million for transportation and legal fees that if anybody rose up against us. So here you've got a politician using our taxpayer dollars against us. Tom Emmer did that. Let me tell you, that's against the law. USC Code 1324A, B, 1, 2, and 3 states that you cannot knowingly transport, harbor, or facilitate any movement of an illegal alien into your country. They didn't just facilitate it. They paid $375 million to move them across state lines. And they're going to do that with all these kids that they're bringing across the border now. And once they get stationed, what are they going to do? Family reunification. It says it right in the New York Declaration that we're involved in. And they have to have family reunification. So once the kids are here, now you have to bring their families over too. That's family reunification. They've devised this so well, and I'm telling you, we've got to stop these foundations and taking money and grant money. And I think we're on a good roll tonight. I think we're doing well. We got some good ideas.
We've got a great role going on and lots of ideas, and we're up against the top of the hour, which I'm only a 1 hour show right now. I didn't want to cut you off because you're on a great roll. I'd love to join you. I'd like to learn, and I'd like to share with everybody here on air, because that's what this show is all about, is you involved. I mean, how to get involved.
It's a leadership program. They're out of state. I could actually probably, do you have a site there where we can mail it to you? Because I could actually email it to you now. And we're getting a hold of them Thursday, so I could get that information to you.
Perfect. I will. You send me the information, and then I'll put it up on the Facebook page, which anybody wanting to find, it's Bella the Patriot on Facebook, as well as the Bella D'Angelo book. And thanks again for tonight, Ron. We'll have you on again, and I'll be at the training. And Walter, I'm going to let you, if you have a closing comment, remark, as I will take us to the end.
Yeah, well, I'll just say that, this is, as somebody who is a libertarian at heart and has those types of leanings, my position on these issues has vacillated over the years. And what's driven it is not my core beliefs. My core beliefs and principles have remained unchanged. I believe that in a perfect world, we wouldn't need immigration restrictions, because the market and the allure of freedom and the consequences of living in a free society would create a scenario whereby you would naturally attract the right kind of person to the country. Unfortunately, that's not the world that we live in. We live in a world where there are very powerful institutional forces that have a preconceived, insidious agenda to centralize power and to turn us into slaves. That's not an exaggeration. That's what they want.
I love it. Yeah. 100%.
And so, given the fact that that's the situation, if one's rational, they have to adjust their position accordingly. And so, I find myself agreeing with policies that under different circumstances I wouldn't, but that's because of the context, not the principle.
Amen.
Bella, the name of that foundation is Foundation for Applied Conservative Leadership. That's the one we're going to be contacting. Foundation for Applied Conservative Leadership. And we're going to be working with them, and I want you to join us.
I'm on board 100%, and I got to take it from here, guys. We ran a little bit different than normally. Normally I mix in a little bit more humor, but we had serious stuff to talk about tonight. And Ron Branstner, thank you very much. Walter Hudson, Christian running the board, and we've got a great show coming up next week. We have got former Senator Scott Jensen, who has thrown his hat into the ring to run for governor of Minnesota. I know that he has some liberal viewpoints on several subjects that we're going to find out what his platform is and what he plans to run his campaign based on. And also, I was in contact with Trevor Loudon, who is New Zealand. He's a self-published. He's very involved in politics. He's going to be at an event in Rochester, Minnesota on the 27th. He wants to come on the show, talk about the election. He wants to talk about Ellison and also Ilhan Omar. So we've got some great shows coming up. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to say goodnight. God bless. God bless America. And ciao for now. Take it, Christian.
Ciao. Yeah.
See ya.